Marketing in social cities. Now this is thoughtful. Hello, I'm Trevor Lai in Shanghai. One of our industry's buzz phrases today is the Internet of Things, shorthand for the connectivity and convergence that technology has made possible. The Internet of Things already has made a major impact on the marketing landscape, partly through programmatic buying and the ability to automate major parts of the media buying process. More importantly, it enables marketers to understand what really works to change consumer behavior and therefore delivers a better ROI. But it's not just people who are connected. It's also products, devices, and entire buildings. Combined, these deliver intelligent streams of information which can be optimized to services and advice to get things done and make the best decisions based on your personal profile. Japan has always been at the forefront of technology trends, so it's no surprise that Dentsu is paying close attention to the Internet of Things and the impact it's having on consumer behavior, consumer understanding, media buying, and other aspects of marketing and media. Our guest today on Thoughtful is Dick Van Motman, Chairman and CEO of the Dentsu Aegis network in Southeast Asia, which includes leading communications agencies like Dentsu, Karat, and Isobar. Dick, welcome to our studio.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be in China and to be on Thoughtful.
Now, today's topic is really interesting and has a lot of global interest because futurists and experts around the world believe the Internet of Things will revolutionize marketing. Do you believe that, and what's Dentsu's point of view specifically?
I believe that. I believe that things are being revolutionized. More so about how it is done and what is possible as against to the actual essence of marketing. Because the actual essence of marketing and brands is about providing value, making brands relevant. And I think that hasn't changed. But the way we can make brands relevant, the way we can produce value, I think that is changing rapidly because of technology.
And what's a specific example of technology that excites you?
I think the technology that excites me is where there can be a real interaction between people and a brand. And we see that more and more. We see the lines being shortened between brands and people because of technology. We see transparency happening. We see intermediaries being taken out. And for some of them, that's a problem. And those companies, by and large, are companies that define themselves by form. For instance, a newspaper business as against to a publishing company. And I think those are the examples of really reframing what you bring to the end consumer. And technology allows you to do that. Uber, Airbnb are great examples, but I would maintain that there are other more simpler examples, like for instance in the diabetes field, where you have apps that can help diabetes patients to basically self-administer themselves, self-monitor, interact with the doctor, and the doctor can see the stats. I think these are smaller but very valuable changes that are happening.
And when we talk about innovation, obviously Japan has for many years been seen as a leader in terms of innovation and implementation of technology, not only in terms of the retail space, but also in their cities.
Yeah.
So talk about how being part of a Japanese network and also working in Japan allows you to perhaps have access to technologies or implement them in a quick way.
Well, first and foremost, Japan is always associated with technology and innovation. And I think in the case of Dentsu, that is very much the case. What has helped with Dentsu is the fact that they never unbundled, which was one of the attractions of when I joined them. Because I think the bundled model is very relevant in a day and age where you can be everywhere instantaneously and 24/7. That requires non-siloed solutions. It requires capabilities that you can bring in a very frictionless way to opportunities or client challenges. As a result of that, you start thinking again beyond just form. You don't define yourself by form. And I think Dentsu has done that brilliantly, and it allows them to venture into technology. We just a couple of weeks ago announced a venture fund that is actively participating in startups. We also have a company like Dentsu Blue which we founded in 2014, which is completely innovation focused, but not just software. They introduced a padlock, a physical padlock that you can unlock with an app. And there are various applications to it. I can't talk too much about it because there's a new rollout of it, but innovation has always been at the center for Dentsu. Before I forget, actually, the robot that we shot into space together with Toyota, one of those things. So there's a lot of opportunity because of the fact that we're Japanese, the fact that we're Dentsu, that allows us to have a technology focus.
And in terms of that holistic effort and that focus, really binding together all of your various divisions, marketing in social cities is a project that you've been working on for a while, and we have a video that we'd like to share with the audience. But could you set that up a little bit and talk about the background first?
When I joined Dentsu, I asked to look under the hood because I wanted to see the magic, and I stumbled on Social City, which is a project that is done by Dentsu sibling, ISID, and it's called Social City. It runs in Osaka already for about 2 years, and it's really where a lot of data streams come together, but also data visualization, and where the physical space is not something that you just go through and buy something, but where you also can interact between other visitors of the space, but also interact with shops in e-commerce, or where physical space is actually being redefined from square meters to cubic meters. Real estate developers normally sell square meters. If you see the video, there are some virtual reality billboards in there, and that makes you suddenly re-look at the space as like, well, I could sell cubic meters. So if you look at Social City video, you see many different intersections of opportunities.
Well, let's take a look at that video now. Great. Well, that was a fascinating look at the future, but can you talk about any brands that are utilizing some of the technologies that we just saw today?
Yeah, for instance, Honda, Internavi. When the earthquake happened, they collected data from the navigation systems and used that to educate people about which roads to avoid, not to go because it was dangerous, etc. I think this is one brand that does that. The RAC in Australia recently did a project where if your attention span was not on the road, then actually the car would slow down. And then of course there's Nest, which Google bought for $3 billion recently. And that is a prime example of the Internet of Things where it's all connected, home management, security. So there are various things popping up. I was at a conference last year where I saw a great app in India that was all about making sure that counterfeit drugs were weeded out. So they work together with the pharmaceutical industry, unique coding on the packaging, and with the app you could just double check whether what you've bought was the real stuff, yes or no. And I think that's a very valuable use of technology for us.
Well, it's interesting because some of the examples you mentioned, especially the larger ones, also Apple with their Apple Watch and Samsung with their virtual reality headset, they seem to grab all the headlines. But then it takes years for that technology to really mature and become seeded into the market in a way that is significant.
Yeah.
Do you see any brands within China having potential to be able to implement those technologies?
Well, having lived for 7 years in China, the one thing I know is that you should never underestimate what can happen in this country. I know there have been various debates about creativity from an advertising perspective, whether China measures up. I always like to think that China is a beacon of creativity in business models and how to apply certain technologies and innovations. So I think that, yeah, in China there's a lot of opportunity that things will arise, and I know that there are various places where government and company and business are working together. If I'm not mistaken, there's a project between Alibaba and the Hangzhou municipality, same with Tencent in Shanghai, all around the concept of Internet Plus or Technology Plus. So I would not find it very inconceivable that something would pop up out of China.
Now, at the same time, from a holistic agency's perspective, what is your mentality or mindset in terms of how far forward you develop ideas or products compared to the maturity of the infrastructure? Because obviously it's great to have these blue sky ideas, you see the marketing in social cities and you're wowed, and then you kind of come back today and say, how is this going to impact my retail operations? How do I actually make this happen? Is the bandwidth enough in this area for me to actually serve this data to my customer? So how do you balance that, between the future and today?
Interesting. Again, working for a Japanese company was interesting because they have a much longer time horizon. And so there are projects and pipelines that are few years, 5 to 7 years out, as against to a quarterly focus. So having the mindset and the tranquility in the system is great. But I think more important, what is crucial is an open source approach. And I think we see that more and more, where we have a suite of companies. We've got Karat, Dentsu, Visium, iProspect. Each of them in their own right, great brands, great propositions. But allowing the cross-fertilization between that is what really lets magic happen. So first and foremost, internally you need to have a kind of open source approach, a collaborative model. Of course, the whole world is moving to a collaborative model, so within the company we'd like to have that as well. And we encourage that by running it one P&L. So organizational wise, get the vision and values wise, get the capabilities, and then put them together without friction. And then is to partner, which is one of the reasons why we like to be involved with startups. And we have our own long time horizons and technology arms. So if you have an ecosystem like that, it allows you to draw in things from various angles.
And from an open source perspective, a great example that you've brought up recently is the Indonesian government is implementing an open source system to implement technology and introduce transparency and accountability with technology in their cities. So let's set this up a little bit as well. We'd like to show a video, but can you talk about this project?
Yeah, I saw the mayor of Bandung speaking at a conference, and I invited him last week to speak to our management team. Because what he's done there, Bandung is the third largest city in Indonesia, and we all know that Indonesia is the fourth most populous country. It's been a promise for quite a few decades, never been unlocked. It was really interesting to see what's happening over there, is that the mayor has embraced technology to have a more direct interaction with the constituents, to infuse accountability. So for instance, if a citizen complains about a pothole in the road, it goes on the dashboard of the particular department, and it won't get off there until it's fixed. And the citizen says, yeah, we're happy. If you go to his room, you can see a control room of social media feeds, data analytics, and YouTube channels that he has set up for each of his departments. I think that's an interesting use of technology.
Well, let's take a look at that video now.
Command center is basically the place where I can access any data available. Any data that's already uploaded on the machine, the room can scan and find the data. The weather data that will generate floods, the data of the school bus, where is it, the data of our internal projects, yeah? The data of the street. For example, if I click this is the data for our internal department. Within this department, we have many software or apps. For example, this is the project management in our infrastructure department. Now, I don't have to do the belusukan physically or walking on the street just to check projects. You just click the location, and you will find this project green with the absorption of the money.
Great. Well, that seems like an exciting mindset and use of technology that could be implemented in many cities around the world, including in China.
It can, but it puts people at the heart. Maybe that's a little bit of a challenge, though at the same time, you know, we've got things like Weibo and WeChat, and they put people at the heart. But I think it's really about the dialogue between the government and the constituents.
Now, seeing that you're in the front row of all these technologies, some of which are in their nascent stages, what's something that you've seen that is on your wish list, your own personal wish list, in terms of you hope it comes to market within the very near future?
Well, there are one or two things that that I've seen in the kitchen that I can't really talk about. But I think I referenced, for instance, earlier on that India app about reading out the counterfeits. I think there's a lot of value creation that happens by just providing transparency, accountability. I think that is, I like that. That's very significant. From a personal perspective, what I love is just the home management systems. There's a lot of things at the moment being developed, but what we haven't touched upon is the data that it produces. Correct. And I think the next real leap is going to happen when the data is being predictive. We can really use it for predictability. Now, there are a lot of discussions about privacy and all that. We think that it shouldn't be about, that there shouldn't be regulation about data collection. There should be more regulation about how the data is used. I think data collection is going to be inevitable with everything being connected. Everything that is now connected in the Internet of Things has an operating system. So technically, with it, if my toaster has an operating system, I can attack the Pentagon if I wanted to. that's what it needs. That's the operating system.
So Dick, since you're on the forefront and in a front row seat of seeing all these new technologies start to seed and evolve, what's something personally that you're excited about that you think can take place in the market very soon?
There's things in the market, for instance, in the retail space. I think retail analytics coming to fruition, or opportunities to use the actual physical product much better. Like Johnny Walker recently in Brazil had 10,000 bottles that they connected via RFID, via an internet solution, and that provided a whole string of to make the point about Johnny Walker. You know, I think that's fun, the fact that you can really bring some excitement to the retail space. But also I think still the medical part and the financial industry. I think those two industries are, let's say, a little bit behind in terms of being disrupted. But there's stuff happening like facial recognition for Alzheimer patients. I think that is very interesting as well. The financial industry, there's a lot of, let's say, skepticism, and they're not really in the best light. And I think there's recently there were insurance aggregators being launched in Singapore, which is something that happened a while back in Europe. But those insurance aggregators are bringing transparency. If you then start connecting that with social media, a rating system for insurance policy together with actual user experiences of consumers, you start to build brands in a very different way. And that's what I'm really excited about. And it references back to Dentsu. You know, Dentsu is all about the mantra of good innovation, where business, society, and technology come together. So try to see a lot of that via that lens of good innovation. And I think that's what will weed out in the end of the day, you know, the ones that really provide value, that really give convenience and an experience that is much more user friendly. And that's what it in the end of the day is about in terms of marketing and sales.
Well, the innovation has to be useful and has to create value for the end user.
As against the being stuck in legacy structures, and therefore people just push whatever they need to push because they've invested billions in a factory that turns that out, turns that particular product out. But what we see now is that whole industries are being disrupted because people can provide value in a much faster way, more convenient way. And I think that's what a lot of time, for a long time, has been forgotten, the user experience. And the user experience, I think, is in the end of the day at the center.
Dick, thanks for being on our show. We look forward to having you back again soon. That wraps it up for today. Be sure to subscribe to us on Yoku, Tudo, and YouTube. You can also follow us on Weibo and Twitter and join our LinkedIn group. We'll see you again.